NetSparker, the developers of a comprehensive automated web security platform that includes web vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. NetSparker's desktop and cloud-based security solutions employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities and provides a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This month's webcast, you're going to learn how to stitch and enrich flow data for security with Viavi Solutions. Register for our upcoming webcasts or virtual trainings by going to securityweekly.com/webcast/on-demand, where you get the previously recorded ones. Ryan Hayes is here with us on this segment. He has 15 years of experience in the IT field. He's worked in a variety of capacities, currently specializing in offensive security and threat emulation techniques during his career. He's worked with a multitude of Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies, along with various U.S. government intelligence agencies on both sides of the field, offensive and defensive. Ryan, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. You were here on another show before, right?
It was, I think Enterprise Security Weekly.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's nice to have you here talking about OSINT. I said that correctly this time.
OSINT.
OSINT scraping with Python. There's probably a couple dozen projects out there that I like bookmarked to do this thing. So and that's not a knock on OSINT or Python or it's just awesome that there's as much interest in this area in automating things in OSINT, especially with Python, my current favorite language. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
No, yeah, there's a ton of projects out there. You can either sit there, roll your own, which I've seen a lot of different organizations do. But I specifically have been working with Tim Tomes on Recon NG. So a lot of the modules that we've been building over the last year and a half now, all are targeted towards, the whole framework is targeted towards OSINT. So, every third-party resource you can think of right now, Shodan, Binary Edge, you name it, it's probably out there. We have a module for it written, or if you don't, submit an issue and we can work on building it.
Or submit a pull request.
Yeah, submit a request.
Tim is actually instrumental in helping me learn Python, believe it or not.
Was he?
Yeah. He's sitting next to me while I was writing a Python project, and I was like,
he's very specific on it.
Yes.
He wants to make sure that you write it just right, which is good, because it retrains all of my bad habits. But
man, Paul, I'm crushed, man. I thought I was instrumental.
Well, you are instrumental. Tim was that weekend at Black Hat when he sat next to me while I was writing Python code. Since then, it's pretty much been all Joff.
Oh, phew. Recovered.
But Joff only teaches you about those errors that you run into when you do recursive listing, right?
Right, yes. No, Joff is encouraging for a lot of reasons. So, Ryan, what kinds of things are you doing? So are you specifically extending Recon NG, or are there other aspects to is it your project, or is it add-ons to Recon NG?
The project's definitely Tim's. He wrote it way back in the day. Probably, I couldn't even tell you when it started, but he wrote it way back in the day. I've kind of just jumped on the project in the last year and a half and kind of been helping him work on that, build that up, upgrade it, and get it to where it's at today. I don't know if you've used it back in the day. It was definitely very hard, had a huge learning curve, and so now it's quite easier to use. And so that's really nice.
What kinds of, for those folks that have not used Recon NG, Ryan, what can you expect today? And maybe some people used it back in the day and want to know what to expect.
Yes, so we have modules that kind of spread all the basic OSINTs that you're going to do. You want to look up a company name? Yeah, we have modules for that. So you can hit up, if you want to look, say for instance, you want to take an organization like Paul Security Weekly, and we want to find all of the DNS records that happen for it. We have third-party resources that we have modules coded for that hit APIs. So there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through with some of the resources that don't have APIs, but we've been working on those. But the ones with APIs, we can go with just a company name and go from there and say, okay, give me all the DNS records from XYZ third party, and we'll we'll start building that list from there. And then you pivot from building a list of DNS records to, all right, let's get the IP addresses, let's get the ports from Shodan, that kind of thing. So it kind of steps you through that full reconnaissance phase that you're going to do on any kind of pen testing engagement or
Ryan,
red team or really anything.
I want to go back and dig into some of the technical details here, since we were talking about Python during the break. And you said something about APIs can be somewhat limiting. And for, I guess, why is that? And then what are the alternatives? Like, thank God someone invented beautiful soup. For one.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the APIs are necessarily limiting. It's the services, the third-party resources that aren't offering API resources. So there's some services out there that are just provide a straight web page service for you that you can go and look up stuff. So when we have to code something up that scrapes that and they change their code in 6 months or 2 months or 2 weeks, we got to go back and we got to change our code.
And is it right? Is it largely beautiful soup? And how are you dealing with the DOM? Are you using a Chromium or Selenium or like what
yes,
hoops you
all
jump
of that.
through? All of that, yeah. Okay.
It depends on the resource. So we have modules already built in, so it makes it really easy for developers that are coming in and just writing a module. We have all the backend code already built for Beautiful Soup, for Selenium, for things like that to reach out to the web page and kind of interact with it the proper way. So you just have to build out a resource and say, okay, I want to hit this resource and I want to pull out this data and kind of like a regex type thing. You give it that and you're like, okay, cool. I'll pull out this data and I'll insert it into the database. What's nice about using a framework for the reconnaissance phase is you have everything into a database. You can easily correlate information, go back and search it super easy instead of having to go back to notes.
But now APIs can be limiting in that, well, first you have to go get a key, or a client secret, usually a token and a secret, right? Or some such combination. But then they can use that to track and limit you further, which is anyone that's coded to an API, especially a public one, knows that once that you've authenticated to them, they're in complete control over how many requests you can make in a certain time limit, and then you have to code around that. And I'm sure you folks have to deal with that regularly too. Yeah,
so I mean, there's limiting factors of, you can only make 10 requests a second, those kind of things. You got to get keys, paid for resources. So we've kind of coded out modules that, will utilize both of the services. If there's a free API key or if there's a paid for API key, it allows you to extend the framework either way and makes it really easy.
That's awesome. So what kind of feeds are you integrating with?
So Shodan, Binary Edge, Hoxie, find subdomains, basically any of the tool sets you find out there right now that you would use for reconnaissance, AMAS or find subdomains. There's, I don't know. There's a half dozen other ones anyways. So all of those things that are interacting with those resources, we've already got modules for them. And then what we do is, we allow you to hit which ones that you want to hit, or you can code out what we call resource scripts that'll just do it automatically for you. And that way, if you have a repeatable process, a methodology that you've already put in place, okay, run these 5 steps for our domains or for our hosts or our IP ranges, whatever it might be. So it allows you to code out those methodologies in place.
So it allows me to automate. Like, how do I have to code the automation, or is it? I
wouldn't even call it coding. Really, it's just kind of a step-by-step. Run this with this parameter. Run this with this parameter. It's almost like a shell script.
Okay. That's awesome.
So does that kind of combat some of the issues that you're running into when companies like, say, LinkedIn? So one of the things that all of our LinkedIn scrapers, those are updated probably monthly because they change
every
their API endpoint, or where they store or shove stuff, or how they obfuscate. Like it's a mess, right? Like, is that kind of the idea behind some of that scripting pieces?
It's the idea behind it, yes. That way the modules can easily get updated to overcome some of those complications that we have. I would say specifically with LinkedIn, what I found easiest to work with is just using Google custom search engines.
It's about the only way to do it anymore, right?
If you want accurate data, yes.
LinkedIn's locked down not even just their API, but there's the ability to scrape it so much that's exactly what I get is you go to Google and you see what Google's indexed from LinkedIn.
Yep. Yeah, and I found that the most accurate and the easiest to use as well.
Yeah, it also helps with that not having to maintain those personas and make those multiple connections, and those personas getting burned based on whatever connection you're making. So that's a better way.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, like even like right down to the image that you're using too, right? Like trying to find a clean image today that hasn't been used somewhere else. Are they looking for stuff like that? I wouldn't put it past LinkedIn to do something like that.
I wouldn't put it past them. I haven't seen that yet, but I mean, all the tricks to get around reverse image searching, where you flip it to the mirror side or you invert colors or whatnot. I mean, a lot of that, yeah, they're detecting that stuff now,
right?
Or it's just easy to catch on to.
Ryan, what if someone's just starting using Recon NG? What are some of the free API keys that you recommend that they go get first, as to not get frustrated, right? Because I think a lot of people will go, "Oh, cool, like Recon NG, like it's a whole framework," but in order for me to like really do stuff with it, I need a lot of basically free API keys just to kind of get up and running. What are those, and what should we do like in prep, right?
Yeah, so I would say a majority of the services all offer at least a free solution that will get you going. Google and Bing all have free API keys. We have modules that are interfaced with those to kind of scrape either domains or IPs or contacts or credentials. One of the nice ones that we've kind of worked with, Hyperion Gray. I don't know if you've heard of him on Twitter. He has a database called Scala that basically has compiled all of the latest data dumps. And so you can search a domain, securityweekly.com, and go look, and if there's any data dump that happened with those domains, you can pull down credentials from them. So that's one that's completely free, and we've kind of worked with him to give us access within Recon NG for any users of it. So that's a nice one. Shodan has free stuff. It's also extremely cheap, especially if you catch it on Black Friday for like $10. You can get an API key that'll give you unlimited access.
That's awesome. And I think also a word of caution, when you're registering for these API keys, it's probably in your best interest to have different accounts from your like normal personal ones or ones that are in your kind of business operations. You want to create separate accounts. Those accounts go get the API keys, because if you do trigger something that causes them to delete your account, which they can do, they don't really need a reason. Their terms of service let them basically do whatever they want, as far as I can tell. You want separate accounts for those, right? Separate Gmail, Google accounts.
Separate email accounts. You usually want to run your kind of reconnaissance scripts from like a VPS in the cloud someplace, DigitalOcean or whatever it might be. That way you don't get blacklisted from your home account.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there proxying capability into Recon NG, and what does that look like?
We don't currently have proxying capabilities that I'm aware of. But we do have different capabilities. So for instance, say you pull down a bunch of domain names, you want to resolve them. So you can swap out DNS resolvers so that you can point at direct authoritative name servers, or if you want to use something like Cloudflare or Google DNS to kind of just check what those would come back as, to kind of remain on a passive side of the house or on an active side of the house for your reconnaissance.
Tyler, anyone? Questions? Tyler, this is your wheelhouse.
So many questions. From a Recon NG standpoint, like the ability, I'm assuming like all this has been ported over to Python 3. The API and modular scripting piece is super nice. The ability to kind of custom code some stuff in that and expand out the framework for both private as well as maybe contributing back a community version. Is that all part of the framework now too?
Yeah, so there's a full wiki, a development guide on the wiki to kind of get you up and running. I know back when I started, a year and a half or so ago, I just kind of looked at it. I was like, okay, let me take this Shodan module and I want to build one for, one of these other services. And it took me 10, 20 minutes to kind of look over everything and, okay, this is cool. I understand how all this works. It's pretty straightforward in the way it, we process data and interact with everything.
That's awesome. And as far as like some of the new cloud stuff, so like S3 bucket where you're using like Grey Hat Warfare or some of the other Python modules for the cloud piece, is that kind of all being integrated as well?
So we don't have anything with the cloud yet, or for the S3 buckets specifically yet, but it's definitely one of the modules on my list. I would say Recon NG has been primarily focused in the passive state of Recon previously, and we're kind of kind of shifting now that we have a marketplace of modules where anybody can kind of submit them into kind of just a free for all of, if you want to do active state or passive state of reconnaissance, your module can do anything.
So are those modules, like, for the community, are those being like all stored in a, like, as part of like the framework and searchable, or is it kind of a hodgepodge? Like, you can make your own module, there may be some GitHubs out there similar to like Cobalt Strike CNAs, right? Like, there's a million of them. There's not really a central place that everybody goes and looks for a single Recon NG module, is there?
I mean, you could do yes and no. It could be both ways. So yeah, there is a central repository. So if you look on GitHub, it's recon-ng-marketplace. So that's a central repository. You can submit a PR for a new module if you have one, and then that'll get indexed and pulled in. And then within the framework, when you're utilizing it, you can do like marketplace search, and I want something for Amazon or for Shodan or for Binary Edge or whatever it might be, and you'll get all the modules that would fit in that category or for that search term.
That's awesome. Intel X, any of the Bellingcat stuff?
Intel X is actually one that I was just working on earlier today, so it will be coming in here shortly.
That's awesome. And those API keys as well, like where they've kind of moved some of those tools to the free stuff, and then they've got their paid version. Can you integrate the paid part into the framework as part of like a private script?
Yeah, so what we do is we have basically options. So usually what we've seen, at least on most of the modules that I've worked on, is usually API endpoints are all the same, right? So you have a key and you have a limitation of like the amount of requests that you can make, 10, 100, whatever it might be. And so we have options in there that you can set within the module to say, hey, I'm only using a free key. I can only pull 10, so pull only 10. That way you don't trigger an alert. You can still get the records that you want and stay within your limitations.
That's awesome.
And so all that stuff's configurable again for modules. That's you can only send 15 requests per second, whatever those limitations might be of the frameworks or from the resource. You can set all those within the module, and it's all configurable at runtime.
Oh, less code for me to write. I like it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Now, where's everybody kind of? Is there a Slack channel? Where's everyone kind of collaborating?
Yeah,
on some of these projects?
There's a Recon NG Slack channel that you can hit up. Again, the GitHub wiki has all of this information on it. And I'm usually in the Slack channel. Tim's in there, and we kind of help troubleshoot, help build modules. Whatever any kind of problems people have with the product. That's
awesome. Have you guys worked much with any of the reverse hash lookups, NTLM hash lookups, data breach, cred sets, or some of those online databases being integrated as well?
So some of them, like I said, we have the one with Scale Up, Have I Been Pwned? We have lookups for those. Those are the two main ones that I can think of at the moment. But if there's other resources that we could easily kind of switch out other ones as well. I mean, as I said, the modules are pretty quick to throw together. If there's a new resource that pops up tomorrow, I mean, it would take just minutes to pop a new one in.
Sweet. And most of that's being collaborated on via the Slack channel?
Via the Slack channel, yeah.
Sweet, man. That's awesome. That's exciting to hear that's kind of being updated, and it's much more modular. That makes a nice place to kind of bring a lot of tools and disparate things together.
that was one of the things I liked.
Sounds like it should be called Recon NG. So, Joff, did you have questions?
Oh, no, I don't. I know a lot about Recon NG. I worked with Tim in the early days with it at Black Hills, and it had solid foundations then. Tim's major rewrite of the command syntax drove me crazy. Love you, Tim, but that really, and that's probably one of the pet peeves a lot of people have. But to be honest, the marketplace idea needed to exist because the pre-packaging the modules all together with the framework was a bit of a challenge, especially for things like Kali and the distributions. So no, I've programmed Recon NG modules before several times. Worked with Tim a little bit in the past, and I think Recon NG is a solid framework. It's a well-architected class hierarchy. It is easy to bring up a module in Recon NG just by sort of copying a template and just going for it. And no, it's solid. I think one of the one of the challenges that I recall, and I think still is a challenge, is maintenance of API keys. They're in a database, sure, it's great, but when you're dealing with a framework that's OSINT to so many different APIs, something will break, and I'm pretty sure that you guys are still suffering from that challenge. Where you just have one API that changes and it will break parts of the framework, which is painful, but that's just the maintenance issue. But overall, that's not a detractor. I think Recon NG is a really nice framework for doing OSINT in.
Ryan, speaking of API keys, how are you protecting those API keys when you store them in the database?
Oh wow, I don't know what you're talking about. Next question.
These are not the API keys you're looking for.
I'll just be honest. I mean, it's a SQLite database sitting on the file system. So I mean, protect your OS. Make sure you have the right credentials. But yeah,
one thing I will tell you, what I really liked was when Tim introduced the threading into the framework, because originally it was single threaded. And that was a limiting factor for some of the bigger queries you want to do. Let's say you wanted to reverse resolve, a couple of class Bs or something. Single threaded was painful. I will tell you right now, I still use Recon NG, even occasionally on internal network tests for doing exactly what I just referred to. For actually taking a class B or a couple of class Bs and just reverse resolving and see what the internal DNS structure gives me. And Recon NG makes that really easy task.
So the threading's nice, right? It's super nice, but we're actually working on a new feature for it, so that we can actually run concurrent modules. So you want to run one to reverse resolve some stuff, and then at the same time, I also want to start hitting Shodan to start looking up new DNS records or whatever it might be.
Even better, right?
That would be nice too. That's gonna be nice.
Go multi-process, multi-thread. Yeah, super nice. But yeah, Tim put a lot of thought into it. The project's matured nicely, and it's really great that he's got extra help now, because with Black Hills kind of separated from that a little bit over time, so that's really cool, man. I like to see the progress. It's really great stuff.
Dr. Doug.
Yeah, I had a less technical question. I get calls about this stuff all the time in terms of companies that they hear a lot of marketing stuff about Intel and OSINT scraping and things like that, and they want to do that kind of thing in relation to their organization. Is this product? I haven't used it, so is this product mature enough that you could start recommending it to clients in that regard? I mean, that they could start using this, or is it something that requires a lot of development and developers to actually put in place?
I mean, I would say it's probably not going to be super developer intensive. I guess depending on the usage and the outcome that you want. If you're looking for things that are kind of already built and what we have, yeah, I mean, you could definitely go in and use it. I just actually was working with a customer just the other week. We were working on specifically just Recon information, and I was able to do a lot of the work up front, hand them over a database and be like, okay, cool, look at Recon NG, here's your database, load it in, and you guys can move forward with this, for the rest of time or however long that you want to go with it.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, that was kind of what I was thinking about, because one of the problems, at least people that call me have, is they're interested in this stuff, they read about this stuff, and then they talk to somebody and they get quoted these just astronomical prices.
You need the enterprise killer feature, which begs the next question. Can I export my results to a CSV file?
Of course, we have that.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the only enterprise feature you need. You support Excel. You're good to go.
A CSV file and a print
Excel,
button, and you're good to go.
CSV, lists. I think there's PDF in there now.
If I'm not mistaken, though, Recon NG is still very much a command line tool.
It is.
So you're using. Well, yes, it's not like you're going to be clicking.
No,
into
I mean that's fine. It was just more of the sense of I wasn't sure how far along that. I mean, if it's a command line tool, that's fine. It's command lines. I just didn't know how developed it was.
So Ryan, that's a question.
Wait, hold on. It is a command line tool primarily, but there is also a web interface.
So is there
there you
any?
go.
But is
That's
is
what
there
I was going to ask that question.
is there
Sorry.
a REST API where I can write a Python script that says I want to run these 6 different queries with these modules? And
Yes, you can.
Okay, that was
Yeah, so there's a REST API that you can interact with, and there's also just a web interface if you just want to log in and interact with it that way as well. You can.
So yeah, that's
I'm assuming
perfect.
your web interface uses the REST API. So
That's great.
Yeah,
No, that's-
It's definitely not as mature as the command line interface. It's still a work in
Yep.
progress, but it does exist and it is functional.
That's a good move. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, that brings up an interesting use case that Doug is talking about, right? So I spin something up in the cloud. I put Recon on G on it. I write my own script that runs basically the recon for my
Yep.
organization. I want to know my IP addresses, my domain names, my
Yep.
email addresses, all of the nice information. And I mean, you could almost build your own. I mean, it's a
No,
great
that's-
open source competitor to the attack surface management commercial vendors that are out there.
I mean, this was just, it was literally for people that they have the skills to work
Yeah.
in that model. They just don't have the money to hire a big time Intel firm, and they're looking for tools like this. that
And
they
I don't want to write it all myself from scratch.
Right, and that's more what I was getting at about
Yeah.
maturity was if there's modules built and there's pieces to pull together. People have that skill set. They just don't want to build the whole thing from scratch. So it sounds like a lot of the work has been done, but they can't afford to go hire SEAL Team 6 to go investigate the thing either.
Right,
so.
right.
No, I mean we've made it quite easy to a point where you can spin up a droplet in DigitalOcean, download the tool, and drop just what we call resource files on the host inside your home directory, and it will start running every module that you want run against whatever resource you have.
And
Domain, IP,
those resource
networks.
files, Ryan, those contain my API keys.
So they could, but the resource files are normally just commands. So I want to run
Okay.
this module, this command, run, and it's just one command per line. You
Right.
just kind of it runs down a checklist.
So they can supply the API keys in that file, or you could be more creative and preload those some more safer way.
So
Yeah.
everything's stored in a SQLite database. So you could just drop a SQLite database of keys right there with the install.
Gotcha. Have you guys considered having or integrating with some kind of vault to store some of those keys? Because I mean, the free key is like whatever. I mean, that doesn't really bother me, right? But if I've got a set of API keys that I paid some money for, I want to protect those because if someone steals them, there go my
Yeah.
keys out the door. Have you considered implementing a vault, like a HashiCorp or something like that?
It's something that we've talked about, and it's one of those things that it's on the list of half a dozen other things.
Right. It's a
that we
huge
need to
pain in
work
the
on.
ass.
But
I
yeah,
mean, I've read about it extensively and determined it's a huge pain in the ass. And I'm in the same boat as you with my software. It's on the list, right?
yeah, it's on the list, and we kind of the way we've looked at it right now, and that's why it's not kind of more of a high priority. Is 9 times out of 10, usually you can go in and be like, oh, this one's compromised, regenerate, and just
Right.
dispose of keys.
Yep. Jeff.
Question from the Discord server. Is it as easy to use as AMAS or Spiderfoot?
Yep, both. Actually, I might even say easier. But so what?
Go ahead. Say
Basically,
it.
basically the same thing you're going to do with AMAS, you can do inside of Recon NG. It would just kind of be different modules. And the reason that we do that is so that you can split it up and do it the way you want to do it. So you might run AMAS and point it at a domain and get, net blocks and get IPs and get reverse DNS. Well, that's going to be 3 different modules inside of Recon NG. It's going to be just as easy. You're just going to have to run 3 different modules, but it's, 3 commands.
I'm a fan of Skip Tracer. I know Skip Tracer has some license plate thing in there. What's the thoughts on the panel on? And Will's awesome, by the way. I think he's great. Love you, Will. Is there a lot of overlap between the two frameworks? I mean, it sounds like some of the modules do have overlap.
I'll tell you, I haven't used Skip Tracer in a while, so I couldn't even tell you what the huge overlap. I know there is a lot of overlap there. I couldn't tell you the specifics on it, though.
Tyler?
I would say there's a little bit of overlap there, but kind of they're looking at some different things, more kind of hunting and targeting versus, say, OSINT looking for specific email or data breach passwords, right? Like if you're hunting a particular person, you're looking at date of birth, name, last location, maybe off of a phone number or an email address. So yeah, some of those could overlap. However, kind of two different purposes for the tool in and of itself. At least the last time I used it.
So based on that example you're talking about, like we would not get into like looking for phone numbers for a user. So you can take a username or maybe just a name in general, and we have API keys for like name check if you wanted to like look for somebody's username across all of the different services that they offer, which I think it's like 100 some odd or whatever. So you could do that, and then like, okay, now we'll take that and we'll look up their GitHub and pull projects from the GitHub and things, that kind of stuff.
Sounds like a neat little integration could happen too, if you want to specifically target a user.
Yeah, that's a lot of what we've been working on, is trying to figure out how to integrate these mass databases and tools and do cross correlation and relationships, and that's where you end up with. All these tools are great at like pulling in a mass amount of data and kind of looking at the things that are available via public or via API, but then utilizing those in mass quantity in order to build kind of a picture or do analytics or build relationships against different data sets and or data relationship points. That's where something like you end up using something like Maltego or King and Union, Analyst Notebook. You're trying to bring in all of these disparate data sets and data correlation pieces, and then try and build some sort of a picture with them.
And I think that's the huge challenge here, right? It's not so much technical in even finding the resources, even working with and interfacing, writing Python scripts against those resources, right? It's how do I create my own journey? What's my process? Like, what is my ultimate goal, right? And then backing off of that, what are my objectives? And then how do I build a tool chain, almost like a CI/CD pipeline, right? Of how I complete all those objectives to get to my goal. To what's the end goal? What's the end answer? I want to know all this information about a company, essentially, so I can pwn them, right? Maybe I want to know information about an individual to prove whether they're a criminal or not, or associate them with some type of criminal activity and investigation, as an example, right? How do I string all these things together? How do I figure out what all the resources are and then string all the techniques? And
it's like PI work. You have to try to figure out, except it's PI work starting from, I'm going to look at every traffic camera in the United States. Yeah. And it's like, how do you filter down? This is the problem I face with this kind of stuff in PI work was how do you filter down the 8,000 hits on Doug White that are not related to the person you're looking at, or all the stuff you just don't even need to see, and that's a real challenge to me in this kind of thing, because you do tend to get this massive quantity of data.
Sorry, Ryan, did you want to weigh in on that?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, I think actually what Recon-ng, one of the pieces that you guys are talking about that we're missing is kind of being able to do data analytics, right? So we can collect all this data, tons of it, but it's still going to require an analytic mindset to kind of come in and look at it and decipher it. So we collect it all, but still some of the data analytics we might be missing, where you might need either another tool set or just a human.
Yeah, that's one of the things. That's why OSINT is kind of an interesting area. Yeah, we've all done OSINT as part of like offensive engagements. It's all like, before we start, that's what we do. It's something we've always done. But the analytical side of that and being able to correlate, build relations, build pictures, and do much more interesting things has always relied on the human. And regardless of what anybody says, I've yet to see a product that takes the human out of that and replaces them with a tool.
Still up to the human to tell the story, right?
Oh, yep. Yeah, you're going to be hard up to find a product that can actually do that. I mean, it's going to be extremely hard.
I think when we do shift to, like, I have a company that I'm targeting, or I'm trying to protect my own company, and I want to automate the attacks, the discovery of the attack surface. I think that's something that we can, write a story, have objectives, and a goal to collect that pertinent information about that. And I think having an open source framework like Recon-ng and others to do that is exciting for me. AMAS being one of the tools that I've used in the past for that. Now I want to spin up Recon-ng and see if I can accomplish that same thing.
I definitely, if you can't, I'd be very surprised. But yeah, you should be able to accomplish all that. And what's nice is you can do some of the analytics, but again, it's going to take your human side. Is you can do tracking analytics the same stuff you would do in AMAS, where, hey, I saw this 2 weeks ago. Now I'm seeing this new one, or these new IPs, or these new domains, and you would pop up to the top.
That's awesome. Cool stuff. Any other questions for Ryan? Outstanding. Ryan, you haven't answered 5 questions yet. You could answer 5 questions.
Oh, yeah. That's the questions we got for Ryan.
That's it.
Right.
Ryan, are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Let's do it.
3 words to describe yourself.
Passionate, nerdy, and hilarious, maybe.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
I'd go with a keyboard, Wanted style, just smashing people's heads in.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Hey, y'all, watch this.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Always first.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead,
Alive,
fictional,
dead.
or otherwise?
I'm gonna have to go back. Just got to keep it within the hacker side. Is Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie?
Oh, nicely done.
Oh, yeah, you got Angelina. That's beautiful.
Bingo.
Most popular mom answer. They were married in real life for a short time. I guess you can't be married to Angelina for a longer than a short time. Apparently.
It's a thing.
But she'll always be your mom.
Whoa.
Wow. Ryan, thank you so much for appearing
Appreciate
on
it.
Paul Security Weekly.
Thanks, guys.
With that, we will take a short break, come back with security news for this week. Stay tuned.